I often slept on the couch. I had a big bedroom with a nice bed, but after my mom went to sleep, the living room became my sanctuary. I'd stay up late, chatting online or tweaking with the HTML on my Zanga page. I'd watch whatever I wanted until I dozed off, knowing I'd wake up to the familiar sound of my mom making coffee and counting out her morning pills. That routine was consistent, until the morning it wasn't. I woke to the sound of my mom stumbling out of her bedroom, yelling for me to move so she could lie down on the couch. Groggy but alarmed, I shifted immediately, asking her what was wrong. She didn't answer. She barely had time to lie down before her breathing stopped. Less than 90 seconds after opening my eyes, I was scrambling to call 911. The dispatcher calmly guided me through CPR. My mom's lips were cold, but she gasped faintly every time I pressed on her chest. The ambulance got misdirected, forcing me to stop and run outside to guide them in. When they finally arrived, they ripped open her nightgown and took over CPR. I sat back on the love seat with our dog, Ladybird, and watched them fight to save her life. The paramedics hesitated to tell me where they were taking her. My shirt was stained with blood, and although they didn't see any on my mom, they couldn't be sure of the situation. Once I explained that the blood was from my cystic acne, they apologized and told me where to go. I watched them drive away in disbelief. The weight of what had just happened crushing me. Back in the apartment, the silence was deafening. I called everyone I could think of. Family, friends, my mom's coworkers, even my boyfriend's school, to excuse him from class. Heather's foster mom offered to pick me up and drive me to the hospital. I quickly changed into clean clothes and waited. The minutes dragged endlessly. At the hospital, I was joined by my boyfriend Drew, best friend Heather, Aunt Shelley, cousin Jamie, and our family friend Diane. Time blurred. I don't remember how long we waited before they allowed us to see her. A doctor explained that my mom had gone into cardiac arrest and was unresponsive but stable. They expected her to be admitted for a while. I went home to grab some things, unsure what a while really meant. When I returned, everything had changed. She had suffered more cardiac episodes and seizures. She was unresponsive, barely breathing, and had to be put on a ventilator. They moved her to the ICU and assured me they'd worked tirelessly to figure out what was happening. Walking into her room, I barely recognized her. She looked so small, so fragile, with tubes and wires everywhere. Her hair was a tangled mess, and sweat covered her face. I scanned every machine, desperate to understand what each one was doing. The doctor told me her cardiac arrest was likely caused by 2 medications mixing in her system. He was honest. The outlook wasn't good. But she was stable, and that was what mattered. My sister, Marianne, came to support me, but by morning I was back at the hospital, refusing to stay away. When I arrived, my mom was awake, but unable to talk. She could blink to communicate and gripped my hand tightly. The doctor warned me she'd suffered significant brain damage, but I clung to hope. For the next week, my days followed the same pattern. Wake up, take the bus to the hospital, spend every possible moment by her side, then go home. I brought in photos and trinkets to make her room feel familiar. When she was awake, I'd ask her questions, relieved each time she blinked a response. My optimism shielded me from the reality everyone else saw. On the 10th day, she began having seizures, frequent, violent ones. She slipped in and out of awareness. I made sure to say, "I love you," every time I left her room, asking her to blink twice in return. That evening, my aunts Sherry, Terry, and Janice were with her while I went to the cafeteria with Drew and Heather. We lingered for an hour, laughing quietly, trying to pretend everything was normal. When I returned, I was told I could join my aunts in my mom's room. They had waived the 2-visitor limit. Dread crept over me. The room looked the same. The machine still beeped, and her chest still rose and fell. But something was different. The doctors explained she'd suffered a grand mal seizure and was now completely brain dead. The machines were the only thing keeping her alive. He advised us to gather as a family the next morning to discuss our options. The decision was mine. At 18, as her only child, I carried the responsibility. My mom had always been clear. She didn't want to be kept alive in this state. I knew what I had to do, and my family agreed. Later that day, they removed the machines, leaving only the heart monitor. In movies, death comes instantly when life support is withdrawn. But in reality, it can take days. Her chest still moved, her heart still beat. That night, my entire family crowded into her room. We laughed, reminisced, and clung to each other. By midnight, her vitals were unchanged. I made a cot on the linoleum floor and slept beside her. That night, as we sat in her tiny room, I joked that she was waiting to see the Friends series finale before letting go. My mom was a huge Friends fan, and the finale aired that night. She needed to know if Ross and Rachel got back together. My Aunt Shelley winced at the comment, but we both knew it was something my mom would have found funny. Later that night, her condition worsened. After everyone else left, my mom's breathing slowed. My aunt woke me as her heart rate plummeted. I watched helplessly as the monitor slowed. Each beep further apart, until finally there was nothing. Her body lurched one last time, and then she was gone. I curled up beside her cold body, sobbing, telling her everything I'd never get to say again. I promised her I'd be okay. Eventually, I stood, kissed her forehead, and said goodbye for the last time. When I left that hospital room, I turned back for one final look. I absorbed every detail of her face. A lifetime of memories flashing before me. Then I closed the door and stepped into a world that would never be the same. Back home, I lay on the couch. The same couch where everything began. Ladybird curled beside me as I turned on a rerun of Roseanne. Somehow, lying there felt like a connection to her. For just a moment. And in that fleeting sense of closeness, I finally fell asleep, knowing a new world would be there waiting for me when I woke up.